In 2019, I decided that's it. I've had enough of working as a stylist on television commercials. I think I'm done.
Today's guest is a business girl crush for me. We have the trailblazer jewelry designer, Cathy Pope, here today with us.
I never did anything very dramatic. I didn't just walk away and put 100% into my jewelry business. I slowly transitioned over about 8 years. My creativity was something that was never encouraged at school, never encouraged by my parents. I had to do it the long way, and a little bit later. Self-care is the absolute foundation of being able to be a good business person, or just a healthy person who is able to manage your career and your life at the same time. Because let's face it, that's all the same thing, right?
Have there been moments where you're like, what the fuck did I do?
Making beautiful jewelry accessible is really important. Jewelry design doesn't have to be extremely luxurious and high-end to be able to enjoy fabulous jewelry.
Dear Diary, if you told me that my jewelry brand, the very same brand I started by simply playing around with in my living room after work, would be worn by New Zealand's Prime Minister whilst she was hanging out with none other than the Queen herself, I probably would have had an aneurysm on the spot. But here we are.
Welcome to the Powerhouse Diaries, the podcast for and by brave, bold, and badass business owners. If you're an entrepreneur who has outgrown those cookie-cutter business strategies and hashtag girl boss cliches, you're in the right place. Because let's face it, entrepreneurship is at least equal parts messy buns and runny mascara as it is the highlight reel we see online. So let's get real. Real about what it really takes to build and run a quote-unquote successful business, blood, sweat, and margaritas included. I'm your host, Yaela, your rebellious entrepreneurial fairy godmother, and join me as I sit down with rockstar female founders for the most juicy, deep, and meaningfuls around success, life, and everything in between. Now it's time for you to step into your powerhouse era. Today's guest is nothing short of a bit of a business girl crush for me. We have the trailblazer jewelry designer, Cathy Pope, here today with us to tell us all about running your own business based on your intuition, defying all rules and trends, and really trusting your gut. Let's get into it, shall we? I'm so excited to have you here, Cathy. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Well, let's dive right in, because the Queen, the Prime Minister, what was that moment like? That must have been surreal for you.
Well, I literally woke up to a message from a friend who said, have you seen this photo in The Guardian? And I clicked on it and saw it, and it was absolutely a heart-stopping moment. I thought, wow, I think this is one of those moments that I'm just always going to remember and be so grateful for. So yeah, it was exciting but unexpected. I had no idea.
That is amazing. And what was the ripple effect that created for you in your business?
Well, on a really superficial level, as soon as I screenshot it and posted it, I think I got the most likes I've ever had ever on a social media post. I think I remember getting something like 900 likes, which is quite a lot. And back then, I think it was 2018. I didn't have that many followers, so it was kind of exciting on that level, but it was just a really proud moment. It was just a really wonderful moment. And I guess the only way that I could share that was on social media, really, because it's not like you put it on the window of your I don't know.
You call the press.
Yeah, there's nothing much you can do with that other than just feel proud.
Yeah, absolutely. I can also imagine, like, it is this kind of full circle moment from this idea you once had to this pivotal moment where, you know, Jacinda Ardern is wearing it and she's hanging out with the Queen. But did it also create a level of pressure or expectation? Did it take your business in a different direction than it was headed?
It never really did. There have been several stepping stones to getting to that point. And I think that there's never been one defining thing that's ever made me go viral or suddenly become successful. I find that it's just been a really slow build up of lots of little steps. So it all started because I just sent her a cheeky DM on Instagram, and it was when she became leader of the Labour Party, of course, at that stage. And she reached out straight away and said, I've long been a fan. I'd love to wear your jewelry. I'd be honored. Just drop some pieces off to my electorate office. So there have been lots of little moments subsequent to that where I've seen her wearing things. But that was just the epitome, I think, when she was smiling, talking to the Queen, and the hand was there and the ring was on there. It was just, wow, this is so cool.
That's amazing.
So it was a build up over kind of a long period of time. And I think that's the thing with the business, is that it's never been just one thing. It's been lots of little things that have accumulated.
Yeah, and I think that's such a good point that you make, because that's true in life and in business, right? We often think that there's these big, like, lightning moments that, you know, shake your world, but the things that actually drive change are the small, consistent moves forward. But I think it's pretty ballsy, like, to just reach out and send a DM, and, like, in general to start a business, to leave a corporate career or a not so corporate career, and start your business, especially a personal brand, takes guts, takes balls. What would you say is, like, the riskiest, the gutsiest, ballsiest business move, or one of them, that you've made?
You know, I really think I've discovered that I'm a little risk averse. Like, I like to take chances. I like to step off the cliff and do things that are a bit scary. But in terms of my transition of my career, I never did anything very dramatic. I didn't just walk away and put 100% into my jewelry business. I slowly transitioned over about 8 years. So in 2019, I decided that's it. I've had enough of working as a stylist on television commercials. I think I'm done. For me, it wasn't that ballsy, but I just gave away all of my gear. I gave away all of my costume equipment, my umbrellas, my robes, my equipment that I needed for my job, to somebody who was just starting out in the industry. I gave all my makeup away to a newbie as well. And then that was my way of not being able to say yes to jobs if they came up.
Burning the bridges. Yeah. It's such a powerful tool.
It was just severing the ties, really.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Have there been moments where you're like, what the fuck did I do?
No, not at all. I don't have any regrets at all. Sometimes I look at television commercials and I look at ads and I think, that's probably the sort of job I would have got and done. And I know everything that would have happened leading up to that. Yeah. And I'm so glad I'm not doing that anymore. I mean, I just was done with it.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I think we all have cycles in our life and in our business, actually, that things need to die sometimes, you know, versions of ourselves, versions of our business, and especially as an entrepreneur, your business, I think, if you're doing it right, is an extension of who you are. So as we evolve, so does your business.
Well, absolutely. And all the skills that I've accumulated and learned over the years of being a stylist are everything that I use in my jewelry business.
Yeah.
So I can
here to help us today.
I can do photo shoots really efficiently. I can do the styling, the wardrobe sourcing, the on-set stuff. I know lots of makeup artists. I've got friends who are photographers. I can pull a shoot together really well, and I know how it'll work. So all the skills are still being used, just transferred into a different area.
Yeah.
And now I'm the client, so it's
it's more fun,
kind of different and more difficult.
Yeah, I love that, and I think the important thing, what I'm hearing you say is, yes, you're starting something new, or not starting from scratch. It was already building, but you're starting from experience. It's not like you're back to square one. Everything is compounding, all the expertise.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with my career, and maybe lots of people who have come from a generation where you went to university and you had to know what you wanted to do, and then some people are very happy in those career choices, but I think that during the last 20 years, there has been this acceptance that people can move and have some fluidity in their career. And mine has definitely been like that. So it's all been related. It's always been, I've been a designer of some sort, but I've just sort of found my way, because my creativity was something that was never encouraged at school, never encouraged by my parents. I had to do it the long way and a little bit later. So everything is relatable and transferable. It's just I've put it into different areas.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about that. You just mentioned, creativity wasn't kind of encouraged or deemed a profession. I think we were talking about this before as well. Like, it's a different generation, right? And you see the difference between our parents that we grew up, and for example, I look at my children, and they grow up with this idea of fluidity in every aspect, and they know that's not like, what do I want to be when I grow up? How did kind of that more rigid way of thinking in terms of not just creativity, but also like self-care and being an entrepreneur, going out of the traditional job market, how was that received? Was that a
self-care? What's self-care? I mean, gosh, I don't come from a generation that is encouraged to do anything, like certainly not talk about your feelings. Don't talk about your feelings. Don't air your dirty laundry. That's what, I was told growing up. But I think self-care is the absolute foundation of being able to be a good business person, or just a healthy person who is able to manage your career and your life at the same time. Because let's face it, that's all the same thing, right?
It is.
If you're completely obsessed with your job and overworking yourself and not looking after yourself in your own personal time, your business is going to suffer.
Yeah.
And I think that when you're working for somebody else, it's quite easy to separate the two because you are on the clock and then you're off the clock. When you work for yourself, there's really the clock's just always going, isn't it? So you really have to sacrifice what you think is going to be productive time, but actually just spend some time nurturing yourself, doing the exercise, doing the yoga, the meditation, the things that are really important to maintaining your sense of resilience in your business. But it doesn't come naturally for me. It's really hard. Like, I had to really force myself to get out of bed and go to the gym this morning. But I knew that I would feel so much better coming into this interview if I just did some exercise and just did something that was really good for myself.
Yeah. And I think that's such a big shift that I had to make myself as well, because I am a recovering workaholic. I was absolutely, in my past life when I had that agency, I just lived on caffeine and adrenaline and was just working 24/7 and had 2 little kids and literally nearly killed myself in the process. And all those things like yoga, like walks, like time with friends, like anything that kind of nourishes me felt indulgent, felt vain and wrong because it wasn't quote unquote productive.
Yeah.
And what I've realized is it is actually the most productive thing I can do also for my business. It's kind of like the rubber band theory, right? Like the more I allow myself to kind of pull back, then the further I can shoot like that rubber band.
I totally agree. You think that everything is all about the hours that you're putting into your business, but actually a lot of it is the hours outside your business, which gives you the breathing space to be able to do more when you're there.
Well, and especially as a creative, I can imagine, because for me, I walk a lot because that's when I do my best thinking. Or actually, I don't even do the thinking. I think I just get out of my own way enough for ideas to kind of drop in. So I go on hikes and then I have my little notes app and I come back and I'm like, okay, fuck, I need to action all these things. Because creativity can't be forced. It's not like I sit behind my laptop and I'm like, okay, be creative, like come up with something. And your entire business and being is around creativity. So how do you combine kind of the structure needed for the business side of it and the space?
That's a really good question, because my creativity doesn't come to me when I'm in New Zealand. It's actually incredibly separate. In New Zealand, I have a retail shop, I have an online shop, I am doing all the marketing, the photography, the sales aspect of my business, which really puts me in quite a different type of headspace to being the designer. And the irony is I am creating beautiful jewelry for people to buy, but I don't feel particularly inspired when I'm in New Zealand because I'm just doing a completely different role. So I have to step away and generally go to India, where my manufacturing happens, where it's colorful, it's vibrant. It makes me feel unencumbered by those things, although I am always available online and I'm still running my business. Of course, the shop is managed by my assistant Sel when I'm away, which I'm really grateful to be able to do that. But I have to completely step away from New Zealand to be able to find that creativity, because that's when, I mean, I will be doing initial designs and scrapbooking and putting inspiration mood boards and things together before I go to India. I do that more these days. In the past, I have just done it on the plane, and it doesn't usually end as well for me with what I come away with. So I've tried to be really organized, and so I do all the creative fun stuff when I'm away, and I'm with the factory, I'm with the makers, I'm changing and evolving and getting ideas. I'm out buying and sourcing. I'm meeting jewelry people all the time. I am meeting other people like me who are creatives working in India. So yeah, it all happens quite separately. It's quite dramatic.
That. It is quite dramatic. It sounds almost like, I read this thing once about Beyonce, where, especially when she was young and she was just starting in her career, and I think her dad was her manager, and she had to perform on stage in like these little skimpy outfits, but she couldn't really get in the performer like mindset. So she created like an alter ego, Sasha Fierce. And Sasha Fierce could do those things. It sounds almost like, you know, we have Cathy the creative and Cathy the business owner. And of course, both aspects always exist, but you can fully kind of play in that realm.
Yeah, you know, you're absolutely right. It's how it feels. And to be honest, it can be quite difficult to have both of those lifestyles, because I feel like here it's very ordered and much about productivity. And I feel like I sort of become somebody different when I'm here. When I'm in India, I feel like a completely different person. It's quite different, and I'm independent. I'm doing my own thing. It's noisy, it's vibrant. I'm totally in control, and I am just speaking a different type of language in terms of my ideas. So I miss that when I come home. It's quite difficult to transition.
I can imagine.
It takes a while.
It sounds quite kind of jarring, and I think that integrating the two.
Finding the balance has been quite challenging, especially over the last couple of years, because I really need to have both. They're essential and I love them. It's just after COVID, I guess, we were locked up for a couple of years and we couldn't go anywhere. So, you know, you break free and are grateful and appreciative for being able to do that. But then it's like, oh, now I've got to do all the functional stuff back here in New Zealand.
Now I've got to be adult, Cathy.
I quite like just being free sometimes.
And I'm sure there are ways to kind of integrate it. But I'm very interested because I love how you're describing all the things you're doing when you're in India. It's not just, oh, I'm going to sit in this beautiful setting with yummy food and be creative. You're dealing with like basically, well, stone to neckline, right? It's really every step of the way, hand picking the gemstones, talking with manufacturers. And I read somewhere as well that one of the reasons you work with natural gemstones is also because of their imperfections. Like they're all unique, they're all different. And I'd love to know how that kind of translates in your whole business ethos and how that works for you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've always been quite fascinated by the perfection of imperfection, of that place where jewelry design doesn't have to be extremely luxurious and high-end to be able to enjoy fabulous jewelry. It doesn't have to be cheap either. It can be somewhere in the middle that is celebrating the beauty of semi-precious natural gemstones. But what comes with those is this rawness, which I'm quite intrigued by. So for me, making jewelry, beautiful jewelry, accessible is really important. And I think with gold, vermeil and sterling silver metals, you can do that. And with these gemstones, when I first started, I didn't know what I was doing. And I was just working off some existing stones that I'd, acquired from a dressmaking client. And I had to do a lot of research trying to source and find new stones to work with. But what I found was with my initial chunky choker gemstone necklace was that there were a few chips or inclusions or, cracks. Not lots, but I mean, they weren't a total mess. But that was something that people quite liked and they didn't mind that. And so I sort of just embraced it.
I love that so much. But here's the kicker. So if we're talking about like perfectly imperfect, right? How do you manage to translate that from the jewelry to yourself, especially in a world as kind of flashy and curated and highbrow as the fashion and beauty industry?
That was a really beautiful transition into a personal question. I love that. Well, of course, I am majorly flawed and imperfect. And I guess that is part of the story of Cathy Pope Jewellery, is that it's my name. It's me fronting the brand. I have to be authentic. I don't want to have a beautifully curated Instagram feed that is all tonal and pretty and really contrived. That's just not my vibe. I discovered that quite early on, that I don't want to be like everybody else. I just wanted to do my own thing and do it my way. And so I'm pretty much just showing up for my brand and showing the beautiful polished images, of course, but what really resonates with my customers is my story, is my journey, is me showing up on my stories and my grid when I'm in India, when I'm a little bit hot and sweaty, but I might be in a gemstone factory and they love seeing what I'm doing behind the scenes and how I'm creating my pieces of jewelry, so that when they come to life, they actually really want to be part of that story and they appreciate that. And so they trust me and they trust the product. So it's all just kind of evolved.
Yeah, I love that because it has more meaning that way. And in the end, I mean, that is where the beauty lies, both in the jewelry and in the people, right? It's not about the curated facade that we present. I mean, that's what we're all about here at the Powerhouse Diaries. It's about those real moments.
I spend thousands of dollars every year on photography and doing photo shoots. And, they really are not the thing that the customers really want to see.
No.
What they want to see is the real gritty stuff.
And I love, so you're, I think, a bit of a rebel in the sense that, when we spoke, you're like, I actually don't care about trends. I don't care about what's supposed to look good. For me, I'm winging it. I'm like an intuition girl. I mean, it's me too. We were just talking about I jump out of the plane and figure out how to build a parachute on the way down. Not literally, guys. So really kind of rebelling against those beauty standards, against those trends. And I think in doing so, also really empowering your clients to not just, blindly follow anything, to really mix it with their own heirloom pieces and stuff and really make it their own and trust their own style. And I think that is something so powerful. How did you get to that point where you're like, this is not about getting, fully Cathy Poped. This is about you.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you should say that, because when I first started, it was all about me wearing pieces that I'd inherited, that I had acquired and, over the years, and mixing those up with modern chains. And people liked my style, and then they started following and they liked what I was doing. So for me, it's very much about producing boutique pieces that aren't mass produced. So we only produce small quantities of jewelry, and it's not about being in every second shop, and it's not based on a wholesaling model. It's about giving women education on how to style and create their own things, mix in their own heirloom pieces of jewelry, how to clip their own amulets onto our chains, how to mix things up, break some molds in terms of what people say you can and can't do, like mixing metals, although that's kind of become a little bit more mainstream now. There's no colors that don't really work. It's just about how to make it work for your jewelry wardrobe, and creating a wardrobe of jewelry that's going to last its quality and and make you look a little bit different to other people out there. So someone said to me very early on, do you look at trends and color palettes on, for what's coming up in fashion in Europe? And I'm like, no.
I am the
Should
trend,
I?
baby.
Well, and no, but the thing is, I think it is quite important to be aware of what's happening, but I don't let that dictate what I'm designing. I think it's good to have your finger on the pulse and see what people are doing, but I'm not going to try and emulate that or be part of that story, because I don't want that pressure. I'm just going to be aware of it, but then I'm going to design what I want. But that'll probably be somewhere in my subconscious. I just am not led by it.
No, and I think, it's good. It informs you to a degree, but you have that discernment of what works for you. Because I think in general, how do you manage the, I would say, kind of peer pressure, comparing yourself to others, having to kind of maintain this persona because it's a personal brand as well? Is that something that affects your life? Is that maybe what plays into kind of New Zealand feeling so boxed in, because here you're the Cathy Pope? You are.
I don't really think about it like that. I feel like I'm just doing my own thing, and sometimes it's just me and my phone and I'm just talking to my camera and I can't see the people out there, and sometimes I think there's no one out there, so I'm just talking to myself, really. I'm just doing my own thing and connecting with people, which is wonderful. But I guess it's really important to me to do what feels comfortable without the pressure to conform to what other people are doing. If I'm completely honest, I'm quite surprised that there aren't more businesses or brands fronting up.
Yeah.
Because it seems that there are a lot of people with really pretty pages.
It's true.
But I don't know who the people are behind it. And so what I'm hearing constantly from my customers is, I love your story. I love watching what you're doing. I love traveling vicariously through you. I love seeing how you're creating things. I don't hear it constantly. I mean, not every day or anything, but it really does resonate. And I don't do it to prove anything. I'm just doing it for myself, really. Maybe it's just like a little bit of a video vlog that I'm doing myself. It kind of feels like that. I just want it to feel natural. I just want the business to be fun, lifestyle, natural, authentic.
Yeah, it doesn't come from a strategic, calculated point of view. But in the end, I mean, that's why we're here today as well. I think it's not just, yes, it's what people want, but I think it's also what people need. I think it's so important to have these conversations, because I think we talk a lot about whatever, be it the patriarchy or big corporates, making it hard. But in reality, I think as female founders, we can make it quite hard for ourselves and each other by just projecting this kind of glamorized version and not showing the real stories. And it can create a lot of feelings of unworthiness, of not being enough, of anxiety, and like imposter syndrome. Is that something that's come up for you?
Yes. All the time.
Oh, you're human. Okay, good.
It took me years to be able to confidently say I was a jewelry designer. I remember when I filled in the immigration cards coming into New Zealand, and it was like, what's your occupation? And I always used to write costume designer, even when I was doing the jewelry. And then, I remember the day that I started writing jewelry designer, it was like, wow, I think I believe in myself now.
Can I claim this as my own?
I really felt like a fraud for a long time because I didn't train to be a jewelry designer. I've done a course, but I'm a designer, so I'm not a jeweler. I'm not sitting on the tools, nor do I claim to. But yeah, to be able to confidently own what I do, it took me a while. I think it took me about 5 years or so.
And what did you do? Like, how did you build that confidence and that kind of just knowing and trusting in your own abilities?
Well, I think there is definitely an element of me just winging it and doing it on a very strong instinctual drive.
Yeah.
And I've always been creative. I've always been quite good at business. I've been quite a good designer, and I think together it works. It's not like I'm super strong in one or the other. I just think that those levels of skills have come together really well for this type of lifestyle business that I've created for myself. I very intentionally did not want to create a business that was going to cause me huge levels of stress. I wanted it to be fun, creative lifestyle with travel and to pay my mortgage, our mortgage. It was about setting me up for something that was going to give me freedom that working in the film and television industry didn't, because I had some freedom, but it wasn't really my choice. It was like fun employment in between contracts. So this was me pulling my own strings and being in charge of my destiny and making the work happen for myself. So I don't know if that answers the question.
No, it does. I love it. Like a designer, not just of jewelry or costumes, but a designer of your life, like really intentionally building that. Have you had moments where you had to make difficult decisions in terms of opportunities that looked, all nice and fun and shiny, but would have meant compromising on your kind of quality of life, on your life design, in terms of the business growth?
Can't really think of anything like that specifically. I've always had this attitude of just try everything. Say yes, unless it's a very strong no, and then I'll say no. But I pretty much have given everything a go, and not everything works out.
Yes.
But most things that were meant to have, and the only way that I could learn is by trying
it.
And I had to do it to know. So I feel like it's just definitely for the first year of business, it was like just try every single thing.
Yeah.
And then I just narrow it down. It's just you start applying the filters after that.
Yeah, I love that, because I think a lot of people, when they start their own business, they're really afraid of failing. But success is nothing more than, getting up one more time than that you actually fall down. You fail forward. And if you don't see it as failing, as if you see it as trying and realizing, hey, that's not for me, or this is not how I want to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I really couldn't encourage anybody more when they're starting out with a small business to try and transition from where you're coming from to where you're going. I think doing a severe stop-start is a little bit risky. So for me, there was always a lot of crossover. For 8 years, I was doing my wardrobe and makeup styling job as well as doing my jewelry business. So it wasn't a fear of failure. Or it was just, let's try this, but it's okay because this is my freelance work is kind of paying for everything. And if it all fails, I can still stay freelancing. So it was all very low risk for me.
Until you gave away all your
stuff.
Until
I gave away all my stuff.
Until you went the other way.
But by that stage, I was pretty established and the business was really starting to come into its own. And it was quite stable.
If you had to, if you're looking back kind of at young Cathy, who was still kind of starting out, and
she wasn't that young.
Younger Cathy, even younger, starting out on this journey, like probably many of our listeners, right, who have this passion, maybe want to start something for themselves, already have, and maybe as a side hustle next to their stable income. If you could go back in time, what's one, if you could tap her on the shoulder and give her one piece of advice, what would that be?
Oh, I think that it's probably something that a lot of people say to themselves when they look back at their younger self, but just be kinder to myself. Just believe that there is magic about you that nobody else has. There's something special that not everyone's going to appreciate, but you are something quite different and special, and just go with it. So I'm
tearing up.
I wish I told myself that.
Yes. And you know what? It's a good reminder even further down the line from time to time, right? In those moments where we doubt ourselves or
we feel like we have to be like everybody else to be normal.
But I've never had that problem.
No, but I guess we all, to our own extent, feel different. But it's okay to feel different.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and I think especially like in New Zealand, there's a lot of like the tall poppy culture. So we're kind of taught to conform. Yeah. So I love that. That's beautiful advice. At the end of our interviews, we always have the opportunity for you to ask me a question. Do you have anything you'd like to ask me today?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess as a female entrepreneur and a woman who comes from a lot of coaching experience, do you have any advice for female entrepreneurs or small business owners like myself to get us through those moments where you have self-doubt and you need to have that resilience, but you're just feeling a little bit defeated or over it, or like there's no point? Like, what would be your tips?
Oh, I love that question so much. I think my answer to that might be a bit counterintuitive. I think we live in a world where we're kind of programmed and told that everything always has to be hunky-dory and we always need to be on and we need to be high vibe and we need to have our shit together and our ducks in a row. And the reality is my ducks are hardly ever in a row. I doubt they're all ducks, like, you know, I'm pretty sure like one's a chicken. And in those moments, whatever I resist persists, as one of my coaches, Preston Smiles, always says. He likes to rhyme. So in those moments where I feel overwhelmed, where I'm doubting myself, where I'm losing my motivation, which is a whole different conversation in itself, what makes it worse and what gives it power is if I believe that there's something wrong with me for feeling that way. So what I've had to learn is to sit with my feelings, which is not a fun thing to do. And I think in those moments when we're feeling that, if we take a moment and don't numb it or don't distract ourselves, just kind of be with it and kind of take that often like younger part of ourselves that's feeling kind of like scared or overwhelmed, kind of by the hand and say, yeah, this sucks. Yeah. And just
we forget that feelings pass, don't we? We forget everything passes. It doesn't stay as intense.
It doesn't. And it passes faster when we acknowledge it and just sit with it. We don't need to change it. And when I do, and I'm like, yeah, I am feeling overwhelmed. And then I'm like, okay, like, what do I need? One of my coaching clients who I love dearly, she always says, what does my Tamagotchi need today? You know, remember Tamagotchis? There was like those little egg computer keychain thingies. I don't know, when I was a kid, that we had to keep alive. It was super basic. It had like, 2 pixels on the screen, but we had to keep it alive and like press a button to feed it or to let it sleep. So kind of what does my Tamagotchi need in those moments? And then if I just sit and take a few deep breaths, it usually comes down to a fucking nap, a hug, a walk, to close my computer, a chat with a friend, to kind of regroup. And when I pour into myself and just kind of sit with it, it doesn't own me. There's nothing wrong with feeling overwhelmed. I think the problem is that we think we should always be happy and always feel great. There's great power in having doubts as well, because it makes you reevaluate and self-reflect.
Find solutions.
Exactly. Yeah.
Great answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Cathy. I had a blast. I could do this forever. Like we could sit here the rest of the day. Thank you. It was an absolute pleasure. For all of you watching and listening, all the information about Cathy, her brand, her store, she has a special surprise for you as well, will be in the show notes. And go follow this amazing woman.